So the next piece of the puzzle for this car is gonna be my suspension. So we're gonna start at the top here. We've got Cork Sport camber plates set to 3 degrees of front camber. Last season I ran 3.25 degrees. It was a little too much. We've dialed that back to 3 degrees with 1.25 degrees in the rear. And the handling this summer was unbelievable. So I've got a white line rear sway bar at the softer setting. I'm on Bilstein suspension, B16s, so that gives me my dampening adjustment. It's the highest Bilstein option that fits these cars. And when I did suspension, I did all the reading, literally all the reading. And I called KW, I tried to get some information from Cork Sport. They didn't tell me anything. I tried to get some information from BC. They don't have any information. So when I talked to Bilstein, they had lots of information. They had told me, that when they built the suspension, they drove the car on the Nürburgring, blah, blah, blah. The spring rates that they came up with were a result of that. And what most people don't know is when you buy, let's say you buy Fortunato or you buy BC or you buy KWV3, if you buy off the shelf spring rates are horrid. You will always, and I can promise you, have more spring rate in the front than the rear on a front drive car. And the reason for that is safety. It is to induce understeer so that when you're doing something stupid in a corner, you're going to lose the front before you lose the rear. And that's a safer way to crash, I guess. But anyways, all my research led me to the Bilstein kit. So the Bilstein kit has a 7K spring in the front and a 7K spring in the rear. So it's neutral all around. That with the alignment that I have in the car, 3 degrees in the front, 1.25 in the rear, and the white line rear sway bar, the thing rotates exceptionally well. It's unbelievable. And I'm still trying to drive it to the point where I either need a stiffer rear spring or stiffen up the rear sway bar. But as it sits right now, I would not change anything. When I bought the Bilsteins, Fortunato didn't make coilovers for the car yet. It was a few months after I bought them that Fortunato came out. But either way, the Bilsteins are rebuildable. I can have them revalved. I can up the spring rates, which is what I wanted. The valve that's inside is a Bilstein valve, so it's German. It's not crap, which is another reason why I really wanted the Bilsteins. I have a video where I will go over how they drive. It's unbelievable how well the Bilsteins actually absorb high-speed compression. You hit a little rut in the road on cheap coilovers, you're either going to break your spine or the car's going to fall apart. With these, they actually move. They absorb the bump. It's crazy. I can't believe it. But we'll do suspension in another video because I could talk for hours on that. But that's pretty much it for power, brakes, and suspension. And I guess the next thing we could go over is some of the little bits and pieces. So yeah, let's go over some of the small stuff that makes the car be the car. It's time to go over some of the small things I've done to the car that are kind of more, I guess, specialized mods, something that's not so general that most people wouldn't do. So interior is stock. We've got the Cobb shift knob, which I love. It's been on there since 2016 and it will never come off. It's simple and it looks nice, and yeah, it's a shift knob. People get crazy with these things. Why? The seat is nice and broken. This is like a Gen 2 Mazda known thing, so when I'm on the track, the seat feels like it's about to come out. I do have a Sparco seat that needs to go in with the Sparco floor mount and all of that, so that'll get done probably either over winter or it'll get done in the spring, like 2 days before my race or something. But anyways, taking a look at the interior here, we have got my gauge set up, and these in my mind are the only gauges that need to go in a Mazdaspeed ever. So you have your access port, which will give you air fuel, it'll give you boost, it'll give you RPM if you want it, fuel pressure, it'll give you coolant temperature, it'll give you everything that you could ever want, except the almighty oil pressure and oil temperature. So up here, we've got an innovative Innovate dual gauge, so it shows oil pressure and oil temperature within the same gauge. It's fully programmable. The way it works is temperatures displayed on the outer ring by colors. So I have green set to change to yellow at 1 in 70, I think, which is when the red line guy told me that the oil is considered warm enough. And then it will stay in the yellow up until I think I set it to 260. Past 260, we're into the red, and that's usually when we need to either do a cool down lap or just kind of keep an eye on it. As I mentioned, with the oil cooler that I have, I've never seen it above 250 ever, no matter how hard I beat on it. So probably never even going to get to the danger zone. This is the failsafe controller, the PSB one. This guy displays boost. It also displays air fuel, which you don't need in these cars if you have an access port. But because of the failsafe, I had this exposed. I was going to hide it in the glove box. Not a great idea, because sometimes this thing trips out and then your car doesn't make any boost and you're like, why is my car broken? And no, it's just the failsafe being dumb. This thing saved me a few times. I've had some lean out conditions on track that were terrifying, so this thing went in. I got a great deal on it from a member on the forums, so that's cool. But yeah, I mean, that's pretty much it. Access port lives here. I have the cable ran right there. Boom. Maybe not the greatest spot, but it works, so that's where it goes. Pretty simple. But aside from that, the interior is just dusty and stock. Nothing really much to be said here. Nice little simple radio, because race car, we don't care about fancy screens. So there we go. That's my radio setup. That's the interior of this. And again, failsafe is something that most people don't care about or they don't think about, because I've had 2 track-related fuel issues where I was running lean. That scared me enough to put this in, and it does work, which is awesome. I can do a video explaining how that thing works, because it's kind of a cool trick little piece, but we'll save that for another time. Oil temperature and oil pressure. 99% of people don't care about it. If you're just trying to add some bling bling to your car, at least it's a useful thing to monitor. People adding coolant temp to these cars, not really useful. People adding voltage to these cars, also not really useful. People adding boost gauges, not really that useful, but to each their own. Couple other things I want to touch on is going to be in the front here, we've got our ARP extended studs. Those were a little annoying to install, but honestly, not the end of the world. I did that because I need to run a 10 mil spacer to clear the brakes. These are Advanti S1 wheels, which are Koning decograms. Koning owns Advanti. It's built in the same factory, same assembly line. It's just their sister company. So the car had the almighty RPF ones, and I had 2 sets of RPF ones, and they looked great on the car. The problem is RPF ones have probably the worst big brake clearance ever, and a lot of people don't know that because RPF ones are the world's most popular track wheel. Well, most people aren't putting big brake kits on the car, and the guys that are usually running Volks, stuff that is stupid expensive, but it clears all the brakes. For me, I needed to find a wheel package that would work on the car, that wasn't going to break the bank, but would clear my stop techs. So I reached out to a few different people. Nobody could help me. Finally, I was told, hey, why don't you just call up Koning and just ask them? So I emailed Koning, and they said, hey, send us the template for your caliper and we'll print it off at the shop, and we'll go into the back and we'll test every single wheel we make and we'll let you know. And surprisingly, Koning did this, and they did it within an hour. It was fantastic. They suggest a minimum of 3 millimeter between the caliper and the barrel of the wheel as safe space. These wheels clear the stop tech kit by 3 millimeters with a 6 millimeter spacer. Because 6 millimeter spacers don't exist, or they need to be custom or something, I just went ahead and slapped a 10 mil in there. Now we have another wheel setup coming. I'm not going to speak to that one yet, but that should be able to clear the caliper completely without any spacer. We'll see. I might still run a 3 mil spacer, because why not, just to be safe. But the goal was to stay with 17-inch wheels. Obviously I could have gone up to 18, but tire cost gets crazy when you're jumping up to 18s. And because this car spends most of its life either on track or on a back road, being driven at redline, the tires fall apart. I put 2 sets of tires on this thing a year pretty much. And when you're racing, I buy a lot of takeoff tires. I buy a lot of used tires. I buy a lot of tires that'll give me one track day and then they go in the garbage. And 17 inch is a very common size. I run a 255 40 17-inch tire on these. RE71s have been my most recent drug, because they are stupid grippy, and a lot of people do 3 track days on them and sell them, and they still got lots of life left. So I've been very successful in buying takeoff RPF one or takeoff RE71s. Takeoffs meaning they were used and they were taken off, and I bought them for nothing. So anyways, that's what the extended studs are about, just to have a little bit of more peace of mind when I'm running my 10 mil spacer there. I can get 6 mil spacers probably on eBay, or I can have them custom made. I haven't gotten around to it yet. And the new wheel setup should clear without any spacer. And if that's the case, these wheels will be getting sold, and I'll be buying 2 sets of those wheels whenever I get that first set test fitted on here. But yeah, I mean, other than that, it's a pretty simple setup. A lot of my mods are done for function, right? There's nothing here that looks pretty. The big brake kit looks pretty, but that's just a side effect of nice parts, I guess. The rest of the build is totally functional. I don't like the look of the open grille myself. I think it looks kind of bad. I mean, when I built the car, I put all my money under the hood and none of it anywhere else. The car was like bone stock looking until I put the big brake kit on, and now the grill. Point of the grill was for airflow, and there'll be videos on that. But yeah, I mean, the car was built to do 20-minute sessions on track without having to get off due to heat or due to brake fade or due to anything. The idea is to make it a competitive time attack car that I can drive to the track with the AC on, and when we leave and the girlfriend's tired and hot, we can put the AC on again and everything's gonna be nice, and we drive home and we're good to go. The car will never get gutted, it'll never get a cage, it'll never get the rear seats taken out, because if you're gonna do something like that, you buy a Miata or you buy some old junk and you gut it. This thing's way too nice. At least too nice to me. I don't know, maybe because I'm poor, I think this car is nice, but it's never gonna get gutted and race card, that is for sure. But yeah, I mean, that's the build breakdown, and I'm going to show some numbers on the screen just to kind of go over the cost. I have a spreadsheet that I put together from when I bought the car to now with all my modifications on it, including the brakes and the wheels and my tires and everything that this car has seen in terms of aftermarket modification. And we're up there. We are really, really up there in terms of cost. Yeah, I mean, to have a successful car that you can take to the track, you know, spend 8 hours at the track doing 2-3 hours of driving, you know, all together for the whole day, and then driving home, you really need to consider things like cooling and brakes. I mean, that's what makes the whole car work. I mean, I don't care if your car makes 500 wheel, because after two laps, it's going to be making 300 wheel, because everything's going to be heat soaked and your ECU is going to be taking everything away, taking your timing away, taking your boost away. This car, the point of it is to keep it running in an area where the ECU is not going to take all my timing and boost away. And that's why the open front grille, some nice ducting behind there, and that should be it. But yeah, pretty much the car was built for a purpose. It's not a show car. It doesn't look nice by any stretch. It's kind of plain Jane, but it does me well. And there's a lot of way faster cars that always want to know, like, hey man, how much power does it make? None. None. Just focus on driving and keeping it cool, because you know, 500 horsepower is not really useful if you don't have brakes or if you're constantly overheating or whatever, right? And like, what's the point of that? It's not fun. So yeah, I mean, that's my breakdown video. That's what's done to the car. It's all track inspired mods to help it do better on track, and you know, be able to do 20-minute sessions without having to do a cool down or having to come into pit or whatever, right? So anyways, I hope you enjoyed this little overview of what's done to my car and why. And yeah, I mean, when I bought the car, it was going to be a street car. It had a sound system in it. I had a sub and amps and all of that. But once I got my first track day under my belt, that was it. Like, sound system came out. You can still see my power line running there, because I do still have 1 amp on the speakers, because I like to have some nice audio when I'm driving an hour and a half to the track. But other than that, I've removed all the other sound equipment, and I've converted it more to a not so much purpose-built race car, because like I just said, it will never be, but pretty much as good as you can get. Good street cars don't make good race cars, and good race cars don't make good street cars, and that's just how it is. You got to kind of try and find the line and stay within it, and that's it. That's the car. That's what's done to it, and the reason that it's done to it is to be better on the track. That's all I want. One thing I forgot to mention, my wheel spec, 17/9. That fits the car perfectly. The offset is 45, which is why the 10 mil spacer in the front pushes out enough not to hit the big brakes. And in the rear, the 45 fits perfectly. Like I said, with the 1.25 degrees of rear camber, when I have the 255 wide tires, it's flush, like it's right there. It doesn't rub. The whole point of the car is to be a functional track car. So nothing rubs, nothing scrubs, nothing scrapes. This is as low as the car is ever gonna be. And honestly, I'm probably gonna raise the rear, maybe, because honestly, lowering a car isn't as functional as people think, especially if you're messing up your suspension geometry, then you're hurting yourself, not helping yourself. But anyways, I digress. That is it. So I'm gonna end this little overview of my car, and I'm gonna basically leave it at some of my mods are unconventional or just not common, like big stupid oil cooler and brake ducts and, you know, fail-safe wideband gauges. Again, not really common, but this car isn't your standard Mazdaspeed Mexico pull highway street car. Like, it's never going to make power that's going to be useful for any Mexico pulls. It never will. And that is okay, because the car is built to do one thing decently well, and that is attack time. I've always wanted to attack time with this car, and this season 2021 I plan to compete with the car. So it will be built to spec. Everything that's on the car so far is going to stay. Even with the swapped motor, I'm still within class rules because power is going to be the same being on the stock fuel system. But just the reason why the car is built the way it is, to be a fun track car that can run with an M3, that can run with a Mustang, that can run with an STI, that can run with a Focus RS and either be as fast or faster. That's the build. That's the plan. That's been my goal. I've raced the car now for 3 years. And every summer people ask weird questions. Hey, what even is that? You know, it's a Mazdaspeed. Oh, we don't really see too many, right? They're not the most common cars, and they're probably one of the least commonly raced cars. At least in Canada and Ontario, we have a pretty decent little Mazdaspeed community, and although a lot of those guys go out to the track to show their support, there's only maybe 3 of us, I want to say, that are kind of hardcore into track focused mods. And yeah, that's pretty much every mod on this car has been done to make it better on track. I've got duct work behind my oil cooler and behind my intercooler, ducting air towards the radiator. Not a mod that anyone would ever really need to do. Putting in this grill left a little gap underneath. It's hard to see, but there's a gap down there that's going to need to be patched up. Again, street driven, normal people cars, nobody cares about that gap. Car that's going to be doing lots and lots of hot laps, no gaps underneath or beside. You want the air to go through your heat exchangers, not around them. So I'll be building a panel to seal that up. And again, that's the reason why. The why is so that I can drive to the racetrack, you know, have a great day pulling on people, having people pull on me, having fun, and then drive it home. If you take it too seriously and it stops being fun, you're doing it wrong. And as soon as they stop having fun, I'm gonna have to stop altogether and reevaluate, because if you're not having fun, what's the point?